Hi guys, good afternoon. I hope you're all well. So in today's video, we are going to start yet another self-portrait project. So we've already done two. We've done a sort of traditional self-portrait where we focus on our torso and our face. We talked about how to place all of our facial features on our face. Um, that was sort of more about thinking what you look like on the outside. We did a superhero self-portrait where we got to think about what we would want to look like if we were superheroes. So that was more using our imagination, and that was a full body self-portrait. Today is going to be a little bit different. In today's self-portrait activity, I want you guys to think about who you really are inside, and that's something that you can also tell through a self-portrait. Self-portrait doesn't just have to be what you look like exactly. It can be more about showing people in a creative way what your feelings are, what your interests are through your picture of yourself. It can tell a story, it can tell a narrative of who you are. So what are some things that you can do to help tell someone this story? Well, you can do things like decide on what position you want to be in your self-portrait. Do you want it to be like an action picture? Do you want it to be you doing something that you really like or you do often? Do you want it to be just a close-up of your face, or maybe even just part of your face? Do you want to have things going on in the background? Maybe it's you in your home, or you doing your favorite activity. Things happening in the background of a self-portrait can be really telling of who that person is. You can decide on what expression you want to have on your face, depending on your mood, depending on what mood you want to convey for that specific self-portrait. You can also use different types of colors. Colors can often make you feel a certain way, or maybe when you feel a certain way, you kind of think of in your mind a certain color. I do, at least. You can match your skin tone to more colors that you feel instead of actually the realistic skin tone that it is. So those are all a bunch of things to think about when you are doing this self-portrait activity today. Next, I'm going to share with you some examples of some artists who have done their own self-portraits in a variety of different ways. So in this next part, you're going to see a whole bunch of very different self-portraits. None of them are alike, and all of them are using different materials. So really in this project, it's really up to you, how you make your self-portrait, with what materials, how big you want it to be, all these things. So I just want these to give you guys some ideas, not to copy off any of them, but just to get your brain thinking of how many different, kinds of self-portraits you can make. So this first one is a pencil sketch self-portrait by an artist named Paul Klee. You can see his expression choice, or the choice that he makes for his self-portrait it's an interesting one. We have, lots of details on the mouth and the lips, and now we get to see his eyes are closed, which is pretty interesting. The title of this one is called Lost in Thought, so interesting choice there. This self-portrait is an oil painting. There is tons and tons of color on this piece, very different to the last one that we saw. Lots of warm tones that, can be found in the skin, but not quite in that intensity. So there's definitely a lot of vibrancy in this one. So I thought that was a really interesting example to show you guys. What do you think, the artist is trying to tell you with her choice of color? So this one is a totally different medium. This is a photograph. So this artist is holding a camera, and either she's photographing her image in a mirror maybe, or she's having someone else take her photograph. But she's also holding a camera. So my guess here would be that she is a photographer herself, and she thought that was an important thing to show the viewer about her. So this one is another photograph, self-portrait. This one is definitely a very creative one. This artist obviously staged this photograph, meaning that she planned out, everything in it, to what she's wearing, to the polka dots on the horse. Really interesting to imagine and guess, what the artist's thoughts were behind this. Your guess is as good as mine, but she's definitely showing us something here out of the ordinary, which is very interesting. So here we have another one where the expression on this self-portrait and the colors are really, really something. Big, wide eyes, blue skin tone. So this is a really good example of being creative with your expression and also being creative with the colors you use to color in your skin. And this one was actually made with crayon. All right, so kind of similar to the previous one, crazy, big striking eyes and kind of, a focus on the eyebrows and, not necessarily a happy mouth. Kind of this one is definitely a frown, I would say, but this one's just a line drawing, so this is pen and ink. There's no color here, but even so, you can get a lot of feeling from looking at this self-portrait. All right, so in this one we're zooming out quite a bit. This one is not just the face of the artist, but it's also his surroundings. He has himself with different animals, plants. He has himself doing something. He has himself painting. A lot of this self-portrait is about the background, in fact, so definitely a different take on how to tell the viewer a story about himself. All right, this portrait is actually not a self-portrait, but it's by a very famous contemporary portrait artist named Amy Sherald. She uses a lot of this grayscale in her skin tone, and then the rest of the painting is with this really bright colors. Interesting here, like why she chose, these certain props in this self-portrait. What's that telling the viewer about this subject? Okay, so now I'm going to show you a sped up version of the self-portrait that I made. Again, this is just another example. No need to do exactly what I've done here or to use what I've used. I did choose to use watercolor, but just use what you have. Use what you're feeling like using this day. I have a little explanation of my finished product at the end, but this is just if you're curious, what I did for mine, but feel free to skip along to the end or fast forward through this part if you like. Okay, so I've just finished my self-portrait um, for today. So the materials that I chose to use, I was in a watercolor mood just because I kind of wanted to be more expressive with color, and I love how watercolor allows me to do that really easily. So I just used my watercolors. And if you saw my brush going out of the shot, it was to a little water glass right here, so you can kind of really get a feeling for how often I go and re-wet my brush. I also had, some pastels and, crayons by my side. I kind of went through my colors, and I picked colors that just were like what I felt. I don't know. So definitely I could go over this now with some crayons or pastel and add some more detail, some more pops of color. But you know what? I don't think I will. This project was sort of to communicate to somebody who you are inside, what you feel, instead of just what you look like from the outside, because that's something that self-portraits also can do. So I was feeling kind of, pretty gray and gloomy actually. So, which is okay. It's okay to have those feelings, and it's okay to express and show that you have those feelings. You're not going to be, happy all the time. I kind of, they even have that expression, feeling gray, and that's, a color. So obviously that's what I do with my background. My colors are pretty muted and brownish and mixed. I have been, feeling rather thoughtful as well, so I sort of took some inspiration from the example that I showed you from Paul Klee, where his self-portrait, his eyes are closed. So that's kind of how I'm feeling today. And so this is what came out of that. I didn't know where it was going to go when I started, but this is it. Yes, can't wait to see yours and see all the different results.